Welcome to the Robert H. Jackson Center, and we are thrilled that you're here with us this evening. We know this is an important day in the life of our country, but we're glad you took some time out for this important program. This is our last of 6 programs that have been funded by the Joseph P. Dwyer Veterans Peer-to-Peer Program, and we are very proud to have been a part of that program for all 6 of them. I want to welcome a few folks tonight before we get started. First, Greg Carlson is here. He's the Director of Veteran Services in Chautauqua County. Greg, here in the back. With him tonight is Cindy Reedy, the Director of the Joseph P. Dwyer Program. And Cindy? If you're a veteran tonight, and you, at the end of this program, if you feel like there are some things that you need answers on, I bet you could probably ask one of the 2 of them, and they would be happy to help you. Before we start, exits, each side of the room. If we have to have them, that's where they are. There's nobody sitting high enough to use the one on the top, but we have 2 at the bottom. And if you could put your cell phones on vibrate or silent or off, that would be appreciated so that they don't go off during our program tonight. We're here tonight to welcome Sergeant Eric Berquin. I know I had it earlier, and I'm saying, and I just looked at it and I said, I got it wrong. So Sergeant Berquin, you're welcome tonight to the Jackson Center. He has completed 3 combat tours, 1 in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq. His platoon was ambushed in Iraq, and the battle became known as Black Sunday. His life story is now part of a National Geographic Channel global event miniseries called The Long Road Home that recounts that Black Sunday battle. The series is based on the New York Times best-selling book by Martha Raddatz. Berquin served as a military technical advisor for the series. And so I think we're going to see some parts of that tonight also as part of our program. He will be interviewed this evening by our very own co-founder of the Jackson Center, Mr. Greg Peterson. And Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you. This is terrific. I've really been looking forward to this, Eric. I've been following you on YouTube and following you on a variety of things regarding your long road home. And we welcome you to the Robert Jackson Center. And we've been doing a lot of projects with the Dwyer programming because part and parcel of what we do here at the Robert Jackson Center is pause and commemorate Jackson's role at the Nuremberg trial, which was really the bookend of World War II. And as part of that, we've been interviewing well over 250 World War II veterans. So we've had a chance to get an opportunity to understand how their experiences. And frankly, tonight I really look forward to talking about your experiences and how they relate to so many of the experiences that we have in the community, our community, but also the fact we're going to be able to share that through the filming of this event. As was mentioned by Tom, National Geographic has a program which is based on a book by Martha Raddatz, which in turn you're the technical advisor, and it's one of your many experiences. So we're going to show a little snippet to help get everybody into a mindset. And so if we could show that, Ed, and then we'll proceed with the interview.
I faced my death at 24 years old. I faced my mortality. I was this skinny, young, overly confident, wild young man. Nobody's ever ready for any type of crucible or test like that. Everything just went to 11 in about 1 second. And I thought I was hit because some of the shrapnel hit the back of my neck. And then the fire just became overwhelming. lot of memories. I don't know if it's just I'm repressing it and I don't want to remember. I just don't remember. It seemed like time kind of slowed down or froze, but the gunfire was going at a different speed. I don't know how to explain that. It's very fragmented and jagged in the memory. It jumps straight from one scene to the next scene, and then on to the next scene. Like a couple pages flipped over real quick. All of it's very bright, but there is no sound. I've got a very vivid memory of a woman. I can see it. Her headscarf was blue, like a light baby blue. She's covered in blood. She's screaming and crying. One of our guys had put down one of their guys, like right there by that doorstep. There's no sounds, even though I know she was screaming. The memory stops, and then it jumps straight to the next part where I had a very, very clear picture of myself standing outside myself. I remember the black door swinging open. Seeing the women, and I'm yelling at them. I can still see one of the ladies' faces, a traditional Arab woman. She looked like she was probably somebody's grandma. The young one's holding a baby. You know, I think about that memory all the time. There were unwilling participants in an ambush. We were too. They just had no way to fight back. All my memories are centered around loss. And I'm still in the middle of it. But at the same time, you know, everything's just fragmenting. I'm wondering if I would be ready to remember everything. Because that's a lot to ask. Going down that road, it's a lot harder than actually being there in the moment. But maybe I've got the courage and the wisdom to do it now. I just need to build up the muscles for it.
First time you've seen it?
No, I've probably seen it realistically close to 30 to 40 times probably.
When you see it after 30 or 40 times, what emotions are you, what's that bring to you?
I was successful in stopping myself from bawling for about 3 times in that 5 minutes. You know, it still triggers quite a few emotions, quite a few feelings. Like right now, I just got adrenaline shaking, just dumping in my system, still vibrating my pec. And it's something that I've noticed. Anytime I talk about this type of stuff or start getting into it, it's typically one of those things that happens. My system gets overloaded with adrenaline.
Was your dad in the military?
No, my dad was not. I had an uncle on my dad's side that he'd served in the military, but he died in training when it was before I was even born.
So what projected you, Eric, to get into the military?
I'd say much like most young men, challenges. A lot of people tell me I couldn't do it. It was a place to escape. And it seemed like it was a pretty good option to what I had that was present at the time.
Where was hometown for you?
Hometown is, I call it College Station, Texas, the home where Texas A&M University. I spent probably about from 8 until about 15 there, so I cut the majority of my teeth there, went to middle school and, portions of high school while I was there. So that's home for me.
So Dallas Cowboys?
I'm not a sports fan at all. It's just one of those things it's kind of like coffee. I've never been fortunate enough to have that affliction.
Wow, that's saying a lot, no coffee. You realize in our world of Swedes, that's all they drink in there. And not being a Dallas Cowboy fan is a good answer here in Buffalo Bills world. I just want you to know that.
Well,
I'm testing you early here, Eric.
Nice. I have enjoyed only one professional football game, and that was a Buffalo Bills versus I can't remember. I'm that bad at football, but it was a pretty good experience. It's the first time I'd done it.
So you're dropping the Buffalo Bills thing here in Buffalo. This is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a fun experience. I can't say I'm a football fan, but I definitely enjoyed the environment.
So where did you do your basic?
I did the first time. I did it at Fort McClellan, Alabama. It is now shut down. It's been turned into a Reserve and National Guard unit. But when I initially entered the Army, I wanted to give it a try to see how it was to make sure that I enjoyed it. So I started out with the reserves, and I went through nuclear, biological, and chemical operations, and that's what my first job in the military was. And while I enjoyed the training, I wasn't too fond of the job, and I wanted something more out of the Army. And at the time I was young, and I was trying to head towards the combat pass, and I had a recruiter ask me if I liked hiking, kayaking, and hanging out in the woods with my friends. It sounded like a grand old time, so I switched over to the infantry.
What did your family say about that?
To be honest with you, I come from I don't want to say a broken family or a broken home or anything like that, but it was definitely dysfunctional. My brother, he obviously knew about it, supported it a lot because he let me mail my bills to his house, and he took care of things for me while I was gone. But, to this day, my mom, she's aware that I was in the Army. My father's deceased. He died when I was just barely 18. Mm-hmm. And, my mom, she's aware of what's going on in the world, but she likes to keep it at a distance so it doesn't hurt her. Yeah. If that makes sense. So she wasn't very intertwined throughout my military career.
As you saw the military, was there an aspect of this as just a kind of a educational advancement, or was it a little bit of escapism?
Escapism, definitely. Hindsight's really 20/20, and you get a lot of wisdom the lot older you get. And I realized one of the things that I was looking for in the Army was a community, a place to belong, a family. And, I definitely got that. I've got an amazing support group now, and, the majority of it stems from the Army, so it just made my family even bigger.
As you now, let's continue the arc of your military career. You were at, was it Fort McClellan? I was
at Fort McClellan. I was temporary for training, and then after that I came back to College Station, and I was stationed at a couple units in the local area, Houston and Bryan. And that's when I went to make the leap to go to the active Army, and that was, it was 1999. And that's when I went full active and went into the infantry.
What's the time period? Now, when you say full active, not everybody's going to fully understand that.
Right. So the military's got 3 branches. We've got the National Guard, the Army Reserve, and then we've got active duty. The National Guard and the Reserves, they typically only serve 1 week in a month to 2 weeks out of the year. And with the National Guard, they're run by the state, so they do a lot of state function. The Army Reserve, they're run by the Army. So there's just different increments in training for what you need in order to be in which segment of the branch you're going to be in.
So you're now full-time active.
Yes, sir.
You're an active. And what is it that you have to sign, and how long do you commit to? Is there a time period where you'd say, I'll commit myself here?
Yeah, I committed to 4 years. Traditionally, most military, or not most of them, but all military contracts are for 8 years, your initial enlistment. typically people have anywhere from a 2, 4, 6-year enlistment, and then the remaining years on their contract are turned into the inactive ready reserves, so they can be called back up in case there's a need.
As you signed up for a 4-year contract, did you have to make some choices as to what it is that you would want to be educated in?
With your job training, yes.
Yeah.
You definitely have to kind of decide on what you want to do. Again, one of those hindsight questions, now being as old as I am, I would have enjoyed, going to something that gave me a hard skill other than the infantry. But, when you join the Army, when you're young, I was looking for, blood and guts, sex and danger. I wanted the stuff that was exciting. I didn't want to really get into a position to where, I'm doing administrative tasks or things that keep me away from the exciting stuff.
So you definitely go in with an eye towards frontline action. And was there a role model or somebody that you talked to kind of set you down that path?
No, not really. It really seemed hard to do. And I wanted to be able to see if I could, fill the same shoes that countless others before me have filled, and to see if I could, measure up to the success of the others that have led me, or led to other soldiers. I wanted to be able to challenge myself to see if I could grow and to be that warrior.
So how does that progress now? You signed up for 4 years, off you go, you're active. What happens during that 4-year period?
Oh, wow. Lots of training. A lot of training happens, a lot of mundane tasks, a lot of, picking weeds out of rocks, a lot of, taking care of the facilities. But the majority of the time is spent in the woods with your weapons, training with your soldiers, developing your tactics and your techniques to make sure that you're proficient. That way when you do deploy, you're able to fall back on those and they become more of a muscle memory instead of something you've got to perform in order to do.
And as you're doing this muscle memory, how long were you during that training before you went on your first deployment?
About three years. I was really fortunate because at the time, the unit that we were in, we were tasked with training up the rest of the brigade in quite a few of the operations that, traditionally the infantry conduct. So one of the big ones that I really enjoyed was being able to conduct what's called mountain training. It's urban training, and it teaches soldiers how to survive inside an urban environment. And, I got to spend quite a lot of time out there training others, so it made me more proficient because you can't really teach something unless you know it. And I spent a lot of time really developing those techniques, and, I'm certain that those led to my success in Iraq and then further down the road in Afghanistan later on. So
as you're learning this, that they see some skill sets in you, the Army sees skill sets in you that actually puts you into a leadership role. What is it that they're seeing at this time?
One of the things that I tried to do when I joined the military was I'd read this article in Maxim magazine. I'm not sure if it's still around or not, but it's a basic men's magazine, and it was talking about how no matter what job you're going to do or when you join some type of organization, if you act like you're a part of the team, they'll want to bring you up to the team and bring you up to their level. So I took that to heart, and when I got to my unit, I was basically just a terror. I was just really trying to be on it, make sure that I was doing everything that I could to develop my skills and, further progress. And somewhere along the line, somebody saw that I was able to do stuff and get it done. So they developed me and mentored me and helped me achieve my goals of making it to a place where I was leading men.
Do they actually kind of pull you out, and is there a track where, in fact, you're going to be a leader, so therefore you get in a kind of a separate silo of activity?
No, I wouldn't. There's not really a separate track or a path for, leaders to follow. There's definitely training that can be conducted to help, further develop their leadership traits and teach them the skills they need in order to lead men and women. But traditionally, the way I always viewed it is I noticed when soldiers were taking initiative on their own and making missions happen without me having to provide input. And that was normally the first indicator to me that, they're ready to move into further leadership roles because they're doing things, not because someone's telling them to, but because they know they need to be done in order for the mission to be accomplished.
So your first deployment is in Iraq?
Yes, sir. Sadr City, Baghdad.
Yep. What'd you know about it? And when you're flying, when you're told you're going over there, this is your assignment, what did they tell you?
Well, we were told we were going to be going out there to assist the Iraqi people because at the time, combat operations had been, declared over with, and we were going there as to provide security and assistance. So that was the intention that we were going in with. And, it obviously changed dramatically when we got there and the way things were going. But, even when things were bad, we were still passing out humanitarian aid, still helping fixing schools, still providing security at, polling sites for elections. So there was this really weird dichotomy of bad stuff going on and good stuff going on at the same time. And it was real interesting being able to switch from both roles and still be able to do good things, but still take the fight to the bad guys.
So how did you know who the bad guys were? Did you get early, I'm envisioning crazy stuff, but like early morning gathering together and there's a kind of a chalk talk, basically sports talk, about what's going on?
We typically do. We get intel fed down from our intel cells within the battalion, and that gets pushed down to us. But we spend a lot of time out on the streets and out there, so you get a real good feel, much like I'm sure a cop walking his beat. You've got a good idea of where the trouble's coming from, where the bad players typically hang out, and how things are going to progress. And just like, every normal neighborhood and city throughout the world, there's tells when things are about to change in the environment, not the environment, but the atmosphere has changed. And those are just one of the things you pick up on while you're out there.
Did you have intelligence that was within the Iraqi administration, within the rebels? What kind of intel were you getting from? Where was the source?
Now, at my level, I was a sergeant. I was an E5. I was a team leader and squad leader throughout that deployment. So most of my information comes from my higher headquarters, which is my company and then my battalion. So I'm sure they were getting plenty of information passed down to them, and it in turn got pushed down to me. And that's what would set us up for what type of operations we were doing.
Were you fearful?
I'd be silly if I said I wasn't, You only get one life. But that's the thing about fear. You can either let it paralyze you and kill you, or you can react to it and just keep moving on.
Having talked to a lot of World War II vets, the answer to the question is varied, but often things are happening so quickly. Yes, you're fearful. You'd just like you said, you'd be lying if you didn't think that, but just things are happening so you don't have time to really pause and reflect. Did you have time to pause and reflect on that stuff?
It's weird. Through a lot of the bigger engagements and the bigger things that happened, I'd often see myself outside of myself. And I don't know if it was just a dissociation with my body or what it was due to the traumatic stress that I was undergoing at the time, or if it's just the way I was fragmenting it so I could observe and participate at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're there, the time period is 2004?
Yes, sir.
So this is your first deployment, you're in Iraq, and we just got watched a piece dealing with that which occurred during Black Sunday. Can you set up what happened there?
On April 4th, my unit had conducted a change of command, or a change of responsibility with the outgoing unit. And while that was taking place, the platoon I was in, we were tasked with conducting presence patrols throughout the city and Sadr City. And we'd been out for about eight hours total. Throughout the day, the driver of what we called honey wagons, which were just big sewage extraction trucks, he started becoming very anxious and agitated and didn't want to be there anymore, didn't want to work with us, tried to walk off. But we were able to coax him back in to stay. Later on in the afternoon, he was approached by some local civilians, told them they were going to kill him and his family if he continues to work for the Americans. So that obviously put, a bee in his bonnet, and he didn't want to be there anymore, and he decided he had enough. So we packed up our gear, and we were, heading on our way back, and we'd driven by this mosque that was in our area of operations, and we'd noticed that there's quite a few armed men out there. Well, part of the rules were that nobody's allowed to be armed. Everybody could have one AK per house, and that was it. But these guys were obviously very clearly in violation of this, as they had many weapons out there. So we stopped to talk to them to try and straighten it out. And, it could have been a stalling tactic. It could have been, just the way things rolled out. But after everything kind of got settled down there, and we're like, hey, you can keep your weapon, just don't bring them out of the mosque. We packed up and started heading back to the FOB, which was where we lived and where he operated out of. And, I still remember to this day, it was really, really surreal. We were just driving along in 4 vehicles. It's been a long day. We're tired. And, I know what gunfire sounds like, but I know what training gunfire sounds like. I don't know what incoming sounds like. And I could start to hear these little things ping off the vehicles. So naturally, the first thing we do is we stop our vehicles and dismount to see what's going on. Got to expose ourselves, And once we did that, the volume of fire just increased dramatically. It was coming in from, the only place it wasn't coming in from was from the bottom. They couldn't shoot from the streets, but they were shooting from, we had anywhere from 3-story to 5-story buildings along both sides of the road. And you can picture about a 3-lane road on each side with a median. It's probably about 2 lanes wide too. So it kind of paints how big the area is. And, the fire just continuously picked up and picked up and picked up. So we remounted up. And as we were trying to get out of there, 2 of our vehicles got destroyed in place pretty much. So the enemy had the fortitude to take out 2 of ours. So we had to walk along the vehicles and put the casualties inside and take cover inside of an alley that we found. It was that black door that you saw in that video. So, once we found that alley, we kind of pulled inside there. And, there's no telling how long it was. It could have been, 10 minutes walking down the street to get to it. But we spent about a good four hours in that alley until the tankers were able to make it to us and extract us. And, it was a moment which it doesn't define my life, but it's definitely a defining moment that made who I am. It's really hard to articulate the strength of the love I feel for the gift that was given me. I should have easily died back there. I was 24 years old. I was down to half a magazine of ammo, 15 rounds. 8 men traded their lives so that the 18 of us that were up there could continue to live. And, it's hard to package that up and cushion it and show people what it's made me into. I hope that others feel the same way, because, there's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't realize why I'm still breathing. When the show was made, I'd been avoiding some of the Gold Star moms. And for those of you who don't know what Gold Star family members are, they're families who had a loved one killed in combat, and they've been given the Gold Star. So there's this one mother, and I'd been avoiding her because one of her sons is one of the guys that died coming out to get me. She had 4 kids, all of them served. 1 died in combat, 1 deployed twice. He committed suicide. Now she's got her other 2 still. And, I avoided her because, the only reason why I'm staying here is because her son took my place. And I remember, pulling out my phone, and I was crying already. I couldn't talk. I just started showing her pictures of my kids. And, I'm aware of the gift that I'm living, and I want to be able to share that. I don't want to waste it or devalue it. if that makes sense. And I'm sure it's easy to understand, but man, is it hard to articulate. You know, I'm just trying to swallow that because I know what it cost for me to be here.
Once you were extricated from that scene and you then came back to your base, how did you debrief?
Well, it's interesting. I rode on the top of a tank. I took my body armor off of me, put it over my legs, and just put my back up next to the lid. And had a bit of time to think on the way back, because that's how we went back. We just fought our way back from the top of the vehicles until we got in. And then I remember going straight to the aid station because I wanted to know who had been killed, who was wounded, see if any of my guys were there. And I just remember mountains of gear. And, you know, just stacks probably of, you know, good 8 feet high of boots, you know, of guys that were wounded and they just piled their boots up, you know, with their Kevlars, their body armor, piles of weapons, you know. I remember seeing that, trying to get accountability, make sure, you know, who of my guys were still around, make sure they were all good. Then after that, you know, they debriefed us for a minute. We told them about what was going on, but it was immediately right back into action. I remember loading magazines still while we were debriefing, because my unit, we rested for about 5 or 6 hours, and the rest of the company went back out immediately. You know, probably about 1 a.m. when they went out, and we followed suit after. You know, we got another combat load of the ammunition and the guns, getting all our vehicles set back up in order to be able to go back out. I do remember very vividly during the debrief giving Captain Denemy Chen's dog tag, and I remember just people asking, you know, really what happened, you know, trying to explain it. And still, I mean, I still have a difficult time trying to explain what happened. I've, you know, been fortunate enough that, you know, multiple people have written books, have made TV shows about it, and it explains it. And it does a better job than I can.
When you read that, does that help put anything into perspective?
Yes and no. You know, I spent a lot of time reading the book, reading the scripts, listening to other accounts of people, because whenever they started making the miniseries, you know, they were reaching out to a lot of the veterans, a lot of the people that were part of it, trying to get, you know, as much information as they could. And there was so much of it that I'd never heard, things I didn't know, because, I mean, I was in the alley. I wasn't one of the guys that went through, you know, the tribulation that they did in order to come out to get us. So a lot of it I knew hearing secondhand from survivors within the vehicles or guys that participated in it. But, you know, I started hearing stuff that guys hadn't spoken about before, you know, things that I'd never heard before, and I was able to stitch things together and get more of a complete picture of what was going on and how it went. Because, you know, it's not everybody kitted up, put on their gear, and went out. You know, Josh here, you know, he'll forever have my respect. You know, they heard something was going on, didn't know who it was, didn't know what it was. They just grabbed their gun, started running towards it. You know, that's one of those things that I don't know if I'll ever be able to say that, yeah, hey, I know I can do that. But I'm very thankful, Josh. I'm very thankful to all the guys that did that.
This deployment ends, this first deployment, and you come back to the States. Is there, within the Army, any sort of counseling, any sort of, you've lost people, you lost people that were part of your company, and is there?
It's offered. If it's taken up, that's a completely different story. You know, at the time I was, you know, a 25-year-old man. I was invincible still, just survived all of that, survived a year's worth of it. So I didn't really take anybody up on any of it. You know, I wish I would have. Maybe I would have progressed further in my healing quicker than I have. But I definitely, after 2008, when I got back from Afghanistan in 2009, I started receiving treatment, and I go now still once a week. I go to group therapy and I go to individual therapy. And it's been very beneficial in being able to helped me come to grips with a lot of the issues that I deal with. And, you know, I'll advocate it for anybody. I was just talking to Josh about it, and highly encourage anybody who's got any type of issues they're dealing with. You know, you as an individual, you're not a brain mechanic. You know, it's much like a vehicle. When it's broken, you take it to a mechanic. Same thing with your brain. You got to take it to somebody that can, you know, specialize and guide you and teach you on how to deal with it and, you know, progress further.
This was all your first deployment. Then you went back 2 more times, right?
Yes, sir.
Iraq 1 more time, and then Afghanistan?
Yes, sir. When Iraq, Afghanistan, Iraq.
Okay, got it. How did you wrap your head around that? You've been in combat. You've been there, seen it all.
You know, honestly, I thought I was real thankful that I went to Iraq first before I went to Afghanistan. But it was just a good, strong kick in the gut that it was a whole different world. It's a completely different fight. I went from a 360 urban environment to a more traditional, linear, you know, or old school warfare. And, you know, each one had their own hardships. And I've never been able to figure out which one was worse. You know, they're equally bad places to be in.
You come back, at some point you are honorably discharged. Did you ever look back and say, kind of reflect on, again, the life paths you had there and say, I wish I would have done certain things differently, or second guessing, or?
You know, it's funny. I told you that question often. And I never really teeter back and forth about how I'd do it. The only thing that I would change, the day that I turned 17, I'd be already shipped if I could have made it, you know, through MEPS to be in the military. I would have joined earlier just so I could have got finished earlier. Mm-hmm. That's the only regret. You know, when you join the military, even though you may not fully understand it, you're signing up in an organization that's got big boy rules. And, you know, we're all playing a game with very high stakes. The older I got, the more I realized, the more I knew it. And when you're younger, you don't really realize that. So you're more capable and willing to go into harm's way.
When did you get discharged?
I retired in 2014.
In 2007, Martha Raddatz writes the book, Long Road Home. Did you read it?
Yep.
When you first read it, what was your visceral reaction?
I read it more from a scientific sort of way. I looked at it more as data than a story, so it's easier to digest. But I'd been involved is not the right word. I'd been interviewed multiple times. I was connected to some of the editors and some of the her assistants that were helping writing it. So I kind of knew what was going on with it and how it was going.
What was not everybody might know that she wrote the book Long Road Home, and she was an ABC correspondent.
Still is.
And still is with George Stephanopoulos, isn't she?
Yep.
How did your paths cross with hers, or did it cross with hers other than on the script?
It passed back in 2004. You know, Martha is really an amazing woman. I count myself pretty lucky to be able to call her a friend. And the love she has for service members and veterans and the things she's striving to do to improve our lives is just phenomenal. Now, I'm telling you all those nice things about it just so I can lead you into how she came into our lives. She was, April 3rd, she was in Baghdad, and she'd managed to talk a general that she knew to get down to where we were because she heard something bad had happened. She came down there and started interviewing, and she was just so moved by some of the stories that the people were telling that she just became a part of our lives.
So Martha Raddatz, working for ABC News, being in Baghdad at the time, literally was there within days after Black Sunday.
I would probably say no more than 36 hours,
Wow.
if I remember it right.
And does the military kind of control access of the news media?
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
You know, they're there with the military. They've got to get there through military channels and be moved around by military.
So getting access to you, you being on the front line at that particular time, what did she have to go through to generally just, you guys met?
You know, I'm going to answer this based off my experience further along down the road. Right. You know, they've got to go through quite a few proper channels. They got to get vetted, and they have to have the right credentials in order to get to where we are. And then before that, they still go through the battalion level before they'll get pushed down to the smaller level to where the stuff's actually happening. So they've got a pretty strenuous process of actually getting down to where we're at. Once she got down to us, you know, I don't want to say there's anything different about her or anything like that. It was like she was different than a normal reporter. I just remember answering a few questions. I remembered nobody wanted to talk to her. Everybody was really distrustful of reporters. I was too. But I had the foresight to think that, you know, if nobody else is going to talk to her, I might as well. You know, at least I'll be able to get my part out there. And from there, you know, that's just how it transpired to this. About 3 years ago, she sent me a message on Messenger, said, "Hey, I got a friend I'd like you to meet, and if you'd like to, would you talk to him?" His name's Miko Alan. He's a screenwriter, producer, and he does a lot of things. One of the things that allowed me to open up and speak to him, he worked at for an organization that was much like this. It was this nonprofit that took down Holocaust survivors' oral tales, and he transcribed them. And after he started talking to me about that and explaining it to me, I didn't realize how I'd lost all my empathy. And through him talking to me and telling me about what was going on with him, I'm like, well, how can I sit here and be this kind of, you know, self-absorbed jerk when there's people who have, you know, way worse trials and tribulations than I've ever had? And this guy who's never experienced them, has got the fortitude to sit there and feel it and empathize with it and write it down to pass on to others so we can know what it was like. And that was just one of the main reasons why I was willing to open up and talk to him.
So you talked to him. Do you know that there's a script in the making?
No, not at all. I knew that they were trying to get it going. That I'd heard a couple different times they were trying to make a movie with it, and then it got made into a miniseries. It was just too grand of a story to be able to present in 2 to 2.5 hours.
That particular clip we saw there was based on a extensive Hollywood-type lot made in Fort Hood, right?
Yes. So we had the largest movie set in North and South America, and the Army really, you know, accommodated the production crew by providing vehicles, some soldiers, allowing us to use the facilities. Elijah Mount site, that was one of the sites where I was talking about where we trained a lot of soldiers at. And it was really beneficial. It was really surreal being able to recreate Solder City, like down to the dirt, and down to the texture on the walls. And Nat Geo sent their art design teams all over the world, Morocco, Jordan, a couple other different places, to kind of get a feel for what the cities were like and how it was. And they brought back all these samples. And they were showing us, we're like, yeah, this is a good one, that's a good one, that's what it looks like. And they were able to recreate this city, and the only exception was the smell. We just didn't have the bad smell that we normally did over there in Iraq because of the open sewage. But it was a really, you know, it was just downright frightening sometimes, to be honest with you. You know, I'm watching all of these very well-casted people that look like my friends, or acting like my friends, wearing my friends' clothes, and going through all the actions that we did. You know, it made it really, really weird.
You are a technical advisor to that. What are they seeking from you? Not only the technical aspects of what this facilities might look like, what the equipment might look like, but how, are they grabbing into your emotional psyche? Are they saying, what's this guy thinking right now?
You know, I had quite a few experiences like that with the directors and some of the actors, where my skill set came in. I made the weapons, the uniforms, like the costumes, the helmets, the BDUs that they were wearing, help make the trucks, set them up to where they'd be period specific so that guys that were part of the fight would be like, oh yeah, that's right, it's not wrong. So it wouldn't pull people out of the story. And that's where a lot of my technical advice went to. Now, with the story along, now with my story arc, obviously they were asking me questions, trying to get inside my head about what it was like and how it was there. And I spent time trying to paint as vivid of the pictures I could for the actors that were either playing me and the other guys too, from memories that we had. And I think I was able to convey a lot of it over to them because, you know, when I first saw the series, there's an episode 1, it's where the character playing me and the lieutenant are sitting there talking, and you can see the actor's really, he's scared, he has no idea what he's doing. And I was like, well, that's a perfect reputation for me. I may look good on the outside, like everything's okay, but I had no idea what was going on. I was nervous and scared too.
A little surreal to see somebody play you.
Yeah, really weird. And, you know, he's also as tall as me, we're kind of built the same way. I was actually pretty fortunate, got to develop a pretty good relationship with him. You know, we still talk to this day. It was nice being able to transition it from just being able to know him to turn it into a friend. Now we've got a guy out there that advocates for us, knows our story, knows our tribulations, what we're going through, and, you know, he's out there, you know, doing things to try and make veterans' lives better.
What was the reaction to the series?
How? From who?
Well, just the critics, you know, people watching. It's a tough story.
Yeah, you know, I haven't had any negative feedback. I haven't heard any of it. I know a lot of people receive. I've had a lot of vets tell me, "Yeah, no, I just can't watch it." I totally get that, but to those guys, I implore them to watch it. That way, you can feel those feelings, experience those moments. You know, there's no highs if we don't have any lows. You know, if you're bottling it all up and not facing with it and dealing with it, you're just going to perpetually sit there and be angry the entire time.
The series does not glorify war.
No.
And the take that the Martha Raddatz puts on it is really, you got one sense what's going on in Sadr City, at the same sense what's going back on at home. Did you work on the home aspect with her?
No, not in that sense. You know, and I think she did a beautiful job capturing it because she was able to really get down with, we got this thing called the Family Readiness Group, and that's made up of the spouses, and that's where the families get the majority of the information. They lean on each other for support. So it's kind of like an armed unit for spouses, and they have their own channels also. You know, I'm very thankful for a lot of those women that were there and that were dealing with a lot of the issues they were dealing with because none of us had any previous experience with that. So it was beneficial that she was able to get into those social groups and be able to really understand that story. That way it could be transcribed because that's one of the things that I really wanted to make apparent and important. You know, it's like you said, it's not a story glorifying war, it's a love story. It's a story of what people will do for one another out of love. And it shows what's going on at the background wall. People are out doing things for each other out of love.
You mentioned something about their networks. In 2004, what was the network of how they got the family members got information what was going on in Iraq or Afghanistan? Is there a special line? Is there a special?
Yeah, it'll go back from the commander, you know, pass information to his wife, and then that wife will pass it down to the other commanders' wives or whoever's in those positions. Then it'll filter down to everybody, so it gets disseminated.
Interesting. Is this? I don't know the status of the series at this point. What is the status of the series?
It's completed.
Completed. And how many episodes were there?
There's 8.
8?
Yes.
How did it end? I didn't get that far yet. Or maybe I shouldn't. Maybe there's a...
I will tell you, episode 8 is I spent all day Saturday skydiving with a bunch of friends that are all military too. And word had gotten around, people have heard about my story before that. And a guy, good mentor, good friend now, he's talked to me about it, you know, and I'm riding a high as you can get. You know, I've had 3 great jumps, landed, didn't get hurt or anything like that. and he asked me about this, and then he brings up the end, episode 8, and I don't know if you can see right now, but I'm starting to get that adrenaline dump. But I was trying to explain to him, I was like, man, it's probably one of the hardest things you're going to watch, and it's extremely tough. I broke down in tears multiple times just trying to explain to him how it works out and what happened. And for those of you that haven't seen it, I hope you do. It really paints what goes back on at home, because while wars end and they stop, it never really ends for the people that were left behind by it, and doesn't end really for the participants. You know, you leave it, but you carry it along with you, much like everything else in life.
How have you, today you're known for your leadership skills, you give training on that. How tough was it to bridge from being introspective, not being able to articulate, to being able to come here today? I mean, here you are. You got a group of vets, incredibly interested folks. Many people more will see this through this interview. How do you bridge that gap?
Well, it started with a lot of therapy, I'll tell you that much. And the other thing is that I didn't really have to bridge much, in the sense that I'm still me. I'm the same guy that I was a couple years ago. I'm the same guy that I was in service. Service just refined and polished a lot of the traits that I had and that I was taught, and it helped me.
Yeah, you smile here. What's your message as you look at today, as we work our way towards closure? What's the message that you want to provide to the vets, as they've all experienced, every one of them have in some form or fashion had an experience unique to themselves, but at the same time there is a commonality?
You know, my biggest word of advice is talk about it. One, there's too big of a gap between the civilian sector and the military sector, and what our service members go through and deal with daily, and the civilians really have no idea of what's going on. Now, while some of the things you may have experienced and been a part of may have been horrific, you don't have to share the gory graphic details. But by talking about it, you can work through it, process it, and it'll help you, lead you to other parts of it that need to be processed too, to where you can finally get right with yourself. Now, these are not technical or scientific terms. It's just been what's been in my experience, being able to pour out and regurgitate things to a therapist without having any fear of, you know, what I've done or being judged or viewed differently. It's really been able to help me to shift my perspective of it and how to deal with it. You know, this show was an amazing opportunity, for one, because I got about 6 months of just really intensive therapy nonstop, and I really had to confront a lot of things. And I've seen the impact it's had on me, and that's why I'd like to share that with everybody else. You know, just talk. Talking about it will help you.
This is really the most important question. What's the most important thing, carp fishing or skydiving?
I've been trying to figure out how to do both of them at the same time. Nobody will let me take a fishing rod with a parachute, because I might poke a hole in it. But they've both been, you know, carp fishing has been something, it really made a turning point in my life. I made my first civilian friend. It's not a big, you know, benchmark for a lot of people, but all my friends have been military people. Trying to bridge that gap and integrate back into society with normal people was really hard, and I was able to do that through a real good friend of mine named Kevin. And you know, I've been a fisherman for going on 20 years now. Never been a catcherman until I met him, and he really helped me refine my technique. And the thing I love about it, it's just like the Army. I get up at night in the dark, I sneak out, go set up an ambush. If I was successful, I'll be taking a picture of them, putting them back in. I spend the night before getting all my equipment and weapons ready. You know, it's really kind of the same thing. And skydiving, that's just, you know, pound for pound, that's the best adrenaline you can get for the cheapest, you know, rate that you can get it at.
Back home, Domestic wife. You're married?
Yes, sir. Been married almost 15 years.
15 years. And she's obviously lived through this with you.
She did.
Talk about that support system.
You know, it's, I hope she'll watch this video. She sees the smile she brings to my face. You know, my wife, Leslie, she's the mother of my 4 children. She's been with me throughout all this craziness. She really supported me and, you know, kept me together and kept my family together, you know, when I was losing it and wasn't really steering my ship the way it needed to be steered. So I'm very thankful for her. You know, I'm fortunate in the sense that I'm not saddled with multiple divorces and, you know, kids spread out across the country, because that's, you know, honestly, that's the statistic for what it is. I've got friends on their 3rd marriages, friends on their 4th marriages. Of my social circle, I can only count 2 of my friends that are still with their first spouse. And, you know, I feel pretty lucky about that, because I've been able to grow up with this woman through some really horrific stuff and still turn into, you know, an average person. And I've got this beautiful woman by my side helping me and taking care of me and my kids.
Do the kids understand what you went through?
You know, I'll catch kids' homework, especially around Veterans Day. You know, they'll talk about Daddy was in the Army and the veteran. They understand the fact that I've gone and fought bad guys. They also know that I've gone and helped build schools. So they kind of see, they know what the military is, but they don't really understand why, you know, they've got all these guys that come over the house all the time, and why I've got such a long extended circle. But they're better for it, because now they've got more people in their lives that be able to pass good lessons to them and care about them, you know, equally as much as I do.
As we are getting close to November 11th, which is Veterans Day, if you had to give a 2-minute Reader's Digest, what's the legacy to the vets as part of your experience? You know, is there a message here?
The message is that you can be put into extraordinary times and circumstances at any time, just being an ordinary person. And as long as you fall back onto your training, everything will be okay, no matter what it is.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Eric McCoyne.
Thank you. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're terrific.